Yeah, I think most of the feedback I've seen has been pretty positive. They went into it wanting to just have, all of us, wanted just to make something fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is for pretty much anyone who watches it. Like, it's just a fun movie. And like,
It's
that's kind of like, it has all these underlying tones that they've touched on. And I think it's great. I think, and the fact that it got into a film festival and is getting the recognition and the distribution that it is great. Yeah. It's a great opportunity, and it's great to see something that started out maybe just as a passion project grow into something that can be shared with more people.
Sorø Films is a production company that supports emerging storytellers with all aspects of independent filmmaking. On this podcast, we interview filmmakers about their practical wisdom and experience in an effort to demystify the industry.
Today, we are joined by Brenna Empey, Director of Photography, and Tia Rosenlof, Camera Assistant, whose most recent film, Stop and Go, formerly known as Recovery, is slated to hit theaters this fall.
So I don't know how you got into film, which is wild.
So when I went to college for it, and I decided to finish the degree no matter what. And then if I worked in film, great. If I didn't, it wasn't the end of the world. It was just at the time of my life where I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was like, why not film? School didn't really prepare me, but I think it was a good gateway into that. And my first job was on this as an unpaid camera intern on a movie called The Night Clerk with Nick and Preston, and it was great. They, because I was an intern, I learned so much. I was there to learn, so the expectations was lower, so like the mistakes I made didn't have as much gravity. But it was like a professional film set. It was a real feature film, so it was pretty much like some of the founding things that I learned there are still like what I use today.
Yeah, that's good. But, well, I guess I have to thank The Night Clerk then, because like you're genuinely like one of my favorite ACs in the world to work with, if not my favorite AC. No, like seriously, because this movie was like, it was such an insane project. Like I look back on it and I'm like still not shocked, but just like very proud that we actually made it and like actually did it. You know what I mean? Because like I have never been that sweaty in my life. We like didn't really have enough crew to do what we were doing, and yet we did it anyway. I mean, I'm sure you felt that. You were the only AC.
Yeah. But it was so nice because like, you stepped up as the operator and EP, so like, it made it easy for me to take care of everything else, just because we split it. And you kept the kit really small, which was super nice. Yeah.
Because I was like, I entering it, I was like, listen, if I'm only going to have one AC, like I've been there. I came up through ACing and I know what it feels like to not go into a project like not having what you need, or like being a bit overwhelmed. And I so desperately didn't want that to happen to you. And I feel like the moment we started talking about it and the moment we like started prepping and going into the project, and the more I got to know you, I was like, one, she's got this. She's incredible. And two, I felt like if we worked together and like helped each other, we would be totally fine. And I do feel like that's what happened.
Yeah.
Because I guess for the people listening to this or watching this, a camera team is usually the director of photography, a first AC, a second AC, and then very often an extra set of hands, whether that's a camera utility, a camera PA, an intern, some extra pair of hands. So Tia was basically doing the jobs of three people, and she like killed it, which was insane. And we made a movie with like great. Me and you on the camera team, which was bonkers.
It was insane, but I am so grateful for it, because it's one of those jobs where it was definitely at the beginning of my career of ACing, and so I learned so much, and it's just one of those things that like now that you've done it, you're just that much more experienced for the next time. Like when we lived in the process trailer, like when we like cars now, it's like it feels like second nature.
Dude,
riding on process trailers.
Yes. Okay, so. I 1,000% agree with that. Like the amount of time I'd spent shooting cars, working with cars, ACing with cars was like pretty limited before Stop and Go. And then like I remember I was on what project was I on? I was on some project just like a couple months ago where I had to light a car. I had to shoot a car. And someone asked me legitimately, like, and you're comfortable shooting cars, like, do you need anything special, or like, how can I help you get ready to shoot this car? And I was like, oh, honey. I was like, I can light a car in my sleep. Like after recovery, I feel like car stuff is just like you said, just like second nature now.
It feels very like, I worked in a commercial and they're like, oh yeah, it's on a process. I hope you're cool with that. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not even one of my. I'm not even. That's like not at the top of my list of worries.
You're like, am I cool with that?
That's no big problem.
You're like, honey, yeah.
No,
we got very good at shooting cars. It was pretty crazy.
Do you want to talk about when you first got into film?
Oh, brother. Okay. So my journey into film is like very there were all these like defining moments that like ended up with me and camera in my life, and they're kind of like they don't seem to fit together until I string them into one like cohesive story. But I like when I was a kid, very young, I like loved writing and like creating stuff with words, and like I wrote a ton especially when I was like a preteen into like my mid-teen years. I like wrote a ton. Like I would choose to sit down at a computer and write rather than like hang out with friends on some weekends. Not all the time, but like plenty of the time. Anyway, so I really enjoyed creating. I really enjoyed like exercising that right brain.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got into high school, I like writing kind of fell off to the wayside, and I tried a little bit of photography, and I took a digital media class where we like did a few things with video and editing and whatnot, and I found that really fun. And I also started consuming more movies and more just like media in general when I was in high school, and I think that really was like a shift for me, realizing that film was a job, realizing that being behind the camera was like something that could be built into a career was like very interesting to me. I'd never really felt a calling towards a particular profession before that. And then years later, I ended up going to BYU, studying film, not quite sure knowing what I wanted to do within the scope of film, but eventually landing on cinematography. And I've just like always felt very comfortable being kind of behind the scenes, still with an artistic voice, and like still able to make choices that like move the story along. But I really enjoy the collaborative aspect of cinematography and bringing someone else's idea to life, because I feel like I would much rather be a part of someone's amazing ideas and be a part of someone's like amazing project and help them and be a part of that process than creating stories myself.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like very large shift from when I was like Renaissance woman at age 13 being like, I must create stories. And so, yeah, film, I think as an art form is inherently collaborative, because to make an incredible project, you have to bring all those elements together, bring the best people at their job together. And I've always really enjoyed that aspect.
No, for sure. You brought me onto Stop and Go.
Yes.
Who brought you onto Stop and Go?
Okay, so backing up just a few years, I started working with Stephen and Whitney and Mallory on some of their comedy ventures, short films, web series, things like that, a couple of years ago, just shooting their stuff. And I've always really enjoyed working with them. I think they're exceptionally funny and exceptionally lovely people to be around, and they've always been extremely open to collaboration, and I really value that in a creator DP relationship. And I can't remember. This is so embarrassing. I can't remember who initially texted me. I think it was Steven.
One of them.
It was one of them. Anyway, they contacted me and said, we have this script. And again, just to paint a picture, we were like in the depths of COVID at this point. It was, mid 2020.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty desolate situation as far as work, as far as creating things, mental health, like all the things, we were very much in the depths of it. And I got a text that just said, hey, we have the script. We want to make this movie about the pandemic. And so I was like, this is great. What a way to like help us get through it, to help us to kind of lift us artistically speaking, like out of this tumult that we're all in as a society. I was like, this is going to be so great. The script was so fun. Again, I think they're exceptionally funny people. I think the decision of Mallory and Whitney to kind of build off of the very sister-like compatible relationship that they already have as people, to kind of translate that onto the screen as like these two sisters was genius. I was so excited to capture it. I love capturing stories about women. That's exactly what it was. Just so many elements fell into place. And I was immediately from the get-go very excited. Dude, that first day, I have distinct memories of that first day.
Oh my gosh. I felt like I failed the first day.
No.
I felt like I went in and I failed.
You did great.
It was such a rough day because like
it was a rough day for everyone.
Well, it was one of those things where it's like I had wanted to work with you, and like, I think every AC wants to impress every second wants to impress their first, every first wants to impress their operator, and so on and so forth. So it's like, because you want to build those good relations, you want to create that network, and you want to make sure that, you do your absolute best for the people that you genuinely enjoy working for. And so it was definitely like, it was the day where I sat in the back of the truck, and then you were on the back of the truck with the camera, and the girls were rollerbladed behind us.
Yes.
And it was a nightmare.
It was hard.
Because you kept me at a 2, and I love you. She kept me at a 2.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It looks great.
No, it was what
the 2 looks great.
It was what I needed to grow as an
little
AC,
challenge.
But it was definitely one of those hard things because like not only was my monitor moving from the car, the camera was moving, and the girls were moving, and it was probably the hardest shot I felt like of the whole film. We did the first thing.
I feel like there were so many things that day that. And I want to be completely honest, like there were discouraging things that happened that day. I feel like for everyone.
It definitely, I think, was a realization.
It was kind of we're like jumping into this moment. Because what I remember most distinctly from that day is shooting out of the back of the truck was difficult. I do remember that. I also remember we were meant to shoot that like luau scene.
Oh yeah.
That day. Do you remember this?
Yes. It was the weather thing.
It was the weather.
Yeah.
And so we'd already had like a kind of a rough, hot day. Like we were all kind of sunburned and tired, and we were like, oh man, what did we get ourselves into? And then we roll up to the location where we were going to shoot the luau. We had all these extras there. We had our cat. I mean, everything was there. The party was all set up.
All these volunteers.
Yes, volunteers.
Lots of families and friends had taken time to come out, and then like the weather just took a turn for the worst. It was like windy and like dark, and we're just like, we can't shoot this.
Yes, like a first day like that can be so gut wrenching.
It can.
And I think we were all feeling a little bit down in the dumps that evening. But I think. It was a lesson in not always having control and working within limitations isn't necessarily like a bad thing.
No.
Because when we did shoot the luau, it turned out really amazing.
Yeah.
I think we even had more extras than we planned on.
Yeah.
It was like,
and I think that's really good though. Like I feel like productions need to see that it's okay to reschedule. It's okay to cancel for the safety and well-beings of crews, whether that's for mental health or physical health or weather or anything else that's going to like put people at risk.
Yes.
So
yes, absolutely. So when I first started talking to Stephen and Mallory and Whitney about the look and feel of Stop and Go, we talked a lot about keeping things fairly simple out of necessity. Because again, we had a smaller crew, we had a lower budget, we were working within limitations, which again, like, to me is never necessarily a bad thing. No. It just forces one to be more creative, I think, with solutions. So we ended up looking a lot at Booksmart. I think Booksmart was huge for me because I think Steven brought it up as this is kind of the vibe, this is the essence we're kind of going for. The way it moves, the way it feels is something we wanted to kind of recreate. And then we combined that with what's that? Locke. Have you seen Locke with Tom Hardy? The whole movie takes place inside a car. Oh. Just like very helpful. I was gonna say, there you go. Lighting wise, yeah.
The whole movie, like they never left the car.
I don't think so. I haven't watched it in a while, but yeah,
It's still very impressive.
I don't think so. Yeah. Anyway, so we looked at like those two movies as like big inspirations of how we want it to look and feel, and I drew a lot from Booksmart in the sense that the lighting setups are like fairly simple and use a lot of like motivated in location light. So we're talking light from windows, light from practicals, things like that, lights that already exist in the space, and then just building off of those, if not just using those practical lights in the spaces. So like figuring out how to light recovery was a lot of listening to other cinematographers about how to light cars, looking at schematics of how to light cars on process trailers, things like that. There were definitely challenges with like what roads we chose and which directions we were facing and whatnot, and just like the nature of how we shot all those car scenes did provide its fair share of challenges. But I think for the most part, we kept the car lighting really simple. Like in a like lighting philosophy sense, I'm very interested in just drawing light from where it is already coming. So yeah, I actually tend to not put in a lot of fill. I tend to not, I don't know how to describe. It's like the house, for instance. When we were shooting all the stuff interior inside their house, all of that light was motivated from either windows or lamps that were already in the space. All I did was, throw a light up outside to draw that light in, to build on it.
And honestly, I think it looked great.
Thank you.
Because I think it was the cut scene that we did. It was like the party to when they were just sitting. And, we had to leave the camera where it was. And then we just spent the next, like, how long lighting. And I just remember like thinking that when it did cut, it was just like, I thought it was just really natural and beautiful. Like just like the one beam of light kind of coming in and hitting them. And the one behind that kind of just filled the room. I think it was simple and it worked. It kind of it fit the mood too, which I think is important.
And I think, and a huge part of the learning journey for me on Stop and Go was learning how to work with the sun. I think the moment I realized that the vast majority of Stop and Go was going to be shot outside, I immediately downloaded Artemis Pro, which is like the app that
shows you where the sun.
That helps you out with the sun. It's Artemis and Helios. I remember listening to like an episode of the Deacons podcast where he was talking about I think he was talking about 1917 something. And just how the Deeks is like.
I heard that they would wait for the clouds to either come or go for whatever they needed. So there's just like hours where they would just be chilling, waiting for the clouds to move or come. And I'm like, that's just crazy. That
gotta work with the sun.
That was what their light source was the sun.
I know, and so I mean that's essentially what we were doing too. Is like God was our gaffer, and we were just kind of like working with what He gave us.
I need a sticker that says that God is my gaffer.
God is my gaffer. Anyway, so I had remembered Deacons talking about how he used Artemis and Helios a lot during his scouts in general, but also particularly like during his scouts for 1917 because they were going to be relying so much on the sun. And, I was like, oh, I see myself in that situation right now, So I got Artemis and Helios, and planning around the sun and tracking the sun, and making decisions on which location we were going to shoot at which time of day was like a huge learning process. And I mean, granted, I made some mistakes. If I had to go do it again, I think I would have shot certain things at different times of day, quite frankly. But again, it was like my first feature, and I was learning. And
there was that day we were at the gas station, and it was super hot, and like all the days before we were outside in the sun.
Yep.
And you had somehow arranged the shots so that we started on the back of the car where the shade was, and then we worked our way inside and then to the front of the car when the shade had actually shifted throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, like, Brenna, like, you saved our lives by keeping us in the shade all day just by rearranging the shots.
I do remember that.
I thought that was just like the best thing. Like the fact that all we had to do was just like look at it like, hey, what are we shooting? Which direction? What's going to keep us in the shade at what time of day? And I think that was like, it was so simple, but it was like such a lifesaver.
Yeah.
I
think it does make a huge difference to like plan around the sun.
Yeah.
Not even does it make a huge difference, but it's necessary to get the shot you want, but yeah, that gas station in particular, that was definitely like a conscious choice. Because in general, I just always prefer to be backlit. And if not backlit, at least at like a 45. I never want to shoot. I would say I almost never want to shoot sunside, unless it's a stylistic choice or it indicates a shift in tone or something like that. So at the gas station in particular, I, whipped out my Helios and I just said, okay, where's the sun going to be? How can we shoot this so that we will always be backlit? Because when you shoot a scene like that, and it's a pretty lengthy scene with, multiple angles of coverage, and you have to make it look like it was all shot within 5 minutes, right? And how do you keep that consistency? And it's just moving with the sun, and making decisions based on where the sun is going to be. And like the amount of times that we had to do that and make those decisions on stop and go, like, taught me so much about working with the sun, and it was great. It was a great learning experience.
I think it was one of those things. It was constantly learning, constantly just crushing it.
The post coloring process was really interesting because we basically had a very like poppy movie, right? And I think my instinct. I mean, if you look at my Instagram, my goodness, like all of my stuff is pretty muted, and it's a little more monochromatic in the sense that like it'll all push warm or all push cool, and it's a little more washed out, I would say, intentionally. With this movie, however, we ended up with such poppy, fun colors like in the spaces, their clothes. I mean, Whitney throughout most of the movie was wearing like this fun yellow t-shirt. Her hair was pink. Like, my goodness, there were so many things that were fun about color in the actual spaces. And we were dealing with a lot of greenery, a lot of flora in the movie. And so I think when it came time to actually color grade, my conversations with Ryan Romanovich, the colorist on this film, was, my gut instinct says, let's mute this stuff. Let's make it a little more subdued. But I'm going to go against that. And I'm going to say, let's embrace the color. Let's make it poppy. Let's make it feel comic booky and fun and light. Because I think what we ended up with was moments of like fairly dramatic lighting, moments of, more shadow, more contrast. And then to kind of balance it out, we upped the saturation of our colors. We made them stand out. We kind of embraced, the pinks and the greens and yellows and things that made it feel bright. And so I feel really pleased with the color, and kind of going against my gut instinct, which is very much not what I usually do, but going against my gut instinct to like subdue those colors and instead embrace them. I think it really paid off, especially with, Whitney's pink hair, the red rocks, making those poppy, I think was really
flats, just that contrast
yes.
of white And
the salt flats,
the yellow, the sun.
Yeah, there were so many moments where I'm like really happy that we went ahead and made those colors pop. And embrace them rather than trying to subdue them.
No, for sure. I definitely feel like it helps too, like when you're going from like the big grass fields to the red rocks to the salt flats, like it kind of, because it is a road trip, you know, it helps you kind of feel like they've seen all these different places across the country. When in all reality, it was all shot here in Utah.
Yes, exactly. So. It was all shot in Utah, but it doesn't feel that way.
No.
And I think you're right. I think the way we treated the colors like really helped with that.
Yeah. It helps you feel like you're visiting new places.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, we're essentially moving from desert, like they're moving from a more desert locale to something a little bit greener. I mean, Eastern Washington isn't necessarily as green as Western Washington, and we kind of embrace that. But choosing spaces that progressed into more greenery and then allowing those greens to pop was, I think, a really it was a good decision as far as their progression and their journey. Yeah. And then, you know, once they actually arrive at the nursing home, it's like all greens, it's forest, it's embracing those colors and those spaces. And I think it worked out well.
Yeah, I liked it.
Even though it was all shot in a desert. You would never know.
And I think that's something that people tend to like undervalue Utah. You know, like we have everything from we have the Wasatch Mountains and all the forests and we have everything to the salt flats and the lakes that we have in this state, all the way down to the red rocks, sand dunes of southern Utah. And it's like we have so much diverse landscape in this one state. It's like a shame that there isn't more done here.
Dude, I feel the same exact way. This is like a bit of a tangent, but yes.
I mean, maybe we're biased because we live here.
But we do genuinely have a really beautiful state, and it's so
we have things that you cannot get anywhere else. Yes, you can get red rocks in other states. You can't get the salt flats anywhere. Yes, you can get the green forest in other states, but like where's somewhere you can get all of it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how do you feel about like the nature of the Utah film community?
No, for sure. To build off of that, so when I joined, you know, I was my first job with Nick and Preston. And it's funny because I still work with Nick and Preston to this day. You know, and I still grow and learn a lot from them every day, and just like they do in their own positions. And it's funny because like every time I feel like I've met everyone, you know, there is someone else, there's always someone new or someone that you haven't worked with. But for the most part, a lot of people I know of, you know, if even if you haven't worked with them, you've heard of them, you know. And I think that just goes to show like Utah, even though like our industry isn't necessarily like big like LA or Atlanta, it's got a really strong group of good professional people that I for one have enjoyed working with. And I think Utah has so much to offer as far as like locals, you know, people who work and live here. And I think that can give so much because they're used to it. You know, you bring people in from other states, you know, they're not used to the heat. They're not used to the desert, the dry,
the altitude,
the air pollution. I worked a job that we were outside every single day. It was like 4 a.m. calls. We worked in the sun all summer. And it was excruciating. All the LA people were dropping like flies, getting sun sickness, and all the handful of locals that had gotten hired, you know, they were all prepared. They all had their sun hats and their sunscreen. And you know, it's little things like that. Like it wasn't, you know, they had like equipment that was used to rough terrain and off-roading, and just little things like that just make a big difference, I think. But I think in general, Utah's got so much to offer as far as crew and just like the different companies that offer equipment rentals and like outsourcing trailers or anything like that. Anything that you need, like Utah has something for it, which is great.
I agree with that. I think, like you said, I think we're really, really biased, but
I think we are. Yes.
I genuinely feel like Utah, and we don't have any humidity.
Zero.
There's no humidity here.
I hate it. I hate the humidity.
I know. Well, there were a few days on that movie that we just did.
Because it was raining.
Because it was raining.
It was raining like, so much. You could feel the water in the air. And I'm just like, my hair is growing, guys.
I remember like it was 85% humidity. And we were like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. We were dying in that humidity.
It was so, I need dry skin.
It was so abnormal for Utah. It's usually very dry here, very low moisture content in the air, which is great. Yeah. I mean,
I'm all about it.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that helps too with equipment and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely.
I know, I know people who, I mean, I'm sure it was one of those things like when you're a local to Washington or Florida, wherever it is, high humidity you get by living by the coast, you know, I'm sure you're well equipped and well used to it. But like,
Yeah, so a really good example of like
Like a last
how a hiccup like positively affected our project was the interaction with the girls and Evan, that whole location, that crazy building that they approached, that actually wasn't the original location. That was a last minute like hiccup / change that needed to be made because of an issue with the location that we were going to shoot at. And I mean, when you hear the words, you know, last minute change or there's been a hiccup, or I mean, your initial reaction is, oh no.
Yeah.
And that was definitely my initial reaction because we had, you know, we'd scouted the location we were going to use. I felt really comfortable about it. I, you know, hopped on Helios and planned out how we were going to shoot it, all that stuff. And then there was this just unexpected hiccup that resulted in us not being able to use that original location. And we ended up at the mill that ended up in the final movie, where Evan lives with his grandfather, I believe. Anyway, so we ended up at the mill. It's a stunning location, obviously.
Very unique.
It's so unique. Absolutely. Yeah. You're super right. And I think that is like the perfect example of a hiccup working out in our favor because I feel like it better served the story to have that like wacky mill location. The weird basement that like was down that driveway with like the weird barn door. Like I thought it was like from a comedy perspective so much funnier than what we had planned at the other location. Like even the fact that they, you know, were standing above him and he was below was just such a good dynamic, you know?
Dynamic. And then at one point he was like up in the window.
Yes,
looking down.
Like running up into the window. So great.
And getting in that room was crazy.
Yes.
Because you had to like climb a ladder.
It was crazy.
It was,
Yeah, it was honestly, like it, when you think about it logistically, it was a bit of an insane location. But to see what we were able to do with the location made it all worth it. I think it is fantastic. And
I think we found some great locations.
Yeah, and like looked really good. And yeah, it was definitely one of those happy accidents. Not necessarily a happy accident, but a happy hiccup, I should say.
Hiccup. No, it all worked out.
Where we couldn't.
There were some fun locations.
Yeah, definitely. I loved that mill location. And then the windmill location.
The windmills were fun.
Yeah.
Because we waited for it to get dark up there. We were just like the only ones on this big corporate lot. Yeah. And
such a strange location.
And I was messing with Whitney and I told her that dragonflies would land on your finger. And so she stood out there like this for like ever.
I remember that.
And I loved it.
Arms out.
And it's true. If anyone's listening, this has happened to me multiple times. Like at the right time when they're chilling, they like to land on things and they'll land on your finger. So anyway, they weren't having it that day.
Yeah, I remember that.
But it has happened. It is a real thing if you're patient. But Whitney wanted nothing more than for a dragonfly to land on her finger.
That was so sweet. I remember that.
It was great.
That windmill location was really fun. I mean, and it was funny too because that canyon, Spanish Fork Canyon, where we were shooting at the mouth of that canyon for the windmills. Obviously it's windy. I mean, there's a wind farm.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Literally we were in a wind farm. And I just remember we were holding down, you know, diffusions, making sure they didn't blow away, and sound was you know, not having the greatest time with all that wind, because I mean the nature of how we were shooting that scene and covering it, we had to keep the windows open in the car, at least one window at a time. And I mean that was a moment where I was very happy that I wasn't dealing with sound, because it was, I mean, the wind was just roaring in that canyon.
Everything was blowy and everything was sandbagged.
Everything was like multiple sandbags on everything. It was, I mean, I think even the camera, we were like, and I remember it was literally the dead of summer and we were so cold because of that wind.
Yes, it was freezing.
It was freezing.
I got the blanket out of my car and wrapped myself in it.
I have a picture of you.
When I was pulling focus, and I was sitting there like huddled with my big blanket over me.
Yeah. I remember that. You were all cocooned in there. I think I took a picture of you. I'll have to find that picture. It was very cute.
I looked ridiculous.
No, it was great. It was freezing. It was a freaking wind farm. Like, it was ice cold, but it was, I mean, I loved that location.
That was a fun location.
It was fun. It looked really well. It looked really, really nice, I think. Yeah. What other? The Salt Flats. We've already kind of touched on the Salt Flats.
They're very popular. And
Yeah.
I think it would be one of those things where it's like, if we didn't film on it, I feel like it'd be a waste of what we have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, for those of us who live and work in Utah, like, you see it a lot for that reason.
Yeah.
So the fact that the film gets to be distributed maybe outside of the state, other people can enjoy and have that, I think will be nice. Because I think for everyone who lives here, it's nothing new for us, which is sad. But, you know, at the same time, like,
it is really special.
It is special. It is unique. And to not use it in a road trip movie, I think would have been a waste.
Yeah, the Salt Flat, the day we were shooting at the Salt Flats, I think was really special too, because it was the last day of principal photography.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And it was like
our wrap day kind of.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, before we started shooting the project, Mallory and Whitney and Steven and I talked about the fact that this is a road trip movie, and that almost gives us permission and like allows us as creators to highlight certain things about our state. And, you know, I mean, we just did, but we can go on and on about like how beautiful our state is. And we didn't originally talk about going to the Salt Flats, but it was almost this like, why not moment? Why not, you know, show off the beauty of this space, and they're on a road trip. I mean, why wouldn't they take anyway? And I think there was so much like bittersweetness. There was a bittersweet feeling to being on the Salt Flats that day, because it was the last day of principal photography. It was so beautiful. I mean, the weather was absolutely perfect. It was such a fun scene. We all had a really good time. It was bittersweet. It was like a really beautiful moment, like the closing of this insane project that we decided to do together. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And I remember, like, you know, trying to get our vehicles onto the Salt Flats was like a whole thing. Thank goodness you were there. You were the one who told us to go down and come back. Yeah. So we didn't get stuck like dummies. Yeah.
I just feel like I've done so much out there now at this point. Like, it's helpful.
It is.
So
it was really helpful.
It was one of those things. Yeah. Like, the last thing we needed was for the trailer to get stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
On the last day. That would have been super sad. Luckily, though, I mean, it was summer, so you don't have to worry too much as long as you just stay away from the wet spots.
It was pretty like bone dry, which was nice.
Yeah. And I think it was a great place to be that big dance scene that they have.
I agree.
So
I agree. It was good. I'm glad we went there. And I love, like, in the movie, the way it's edited, like the tone shift that comes along with like revealing her dancing on the Salt Flats. I think it's just like really fun. I'm glad we did it. Yeah, I'm glad we drove all the way out there for like 2.5 hours and shot it. It's kind of wild. I feel like, because I mean, I don't know about you, but like when you get an opportunity to like make a small little project with your friends, it's not that you don't have high hopes for the project. It's the reality of, I'm making a small project with my friends. And it's like there's a certain, I feel like there's a certain part of that is just, that's all it is. That is. And it's going to be fun and it's going to be great. And here we go, you know? So I knew that we were going to go for a festival run. We had talked about it several times, and again, it wasn't me doubting the project. It was more just I'm the type of person who I just don't get my hopes up. I know that's really like depressing to say, but I just don't. Are you the same way?
I'm the same way, because it is, for me, it is the hardest thing to have your hopes up.
Yes.
And then just, have to be the disappointment.
Yeah.
So for me, it's better to have no expectations.
We need to get better at like manifesting like good things. Anyway. So it's not that I doubted the project. No. I'm extremely proud of this project. I think we both are.
Yeah.
It was an absolute joy to make. But I will, like, I'm gonna be honest and say that I was very pleasantly surprised when we got into South by.
Yeah.
I remember getting a text completely unexpected from Steven that just said, "How does it feel to be the DP of a South by Southwest premiere?" And I didn't start crying, but like I almost started crying. I definitely like felt some emotion because it was just so unexpected, and so it was just huge. I mean, it's crazy to go through something as like wholly traumatic and intense as COVID.
Yeah.
And like have a blip of fun with your friends making this movie, and then for it to actually become something that other people are enjoying and are paying attention to. I mean, like that's a really, really special feeling, and like yeah, it definitely caught me off guard, and I mean, it was incredible. I was, I just congratulations to Stephen and Whitney and Mal. I mean, I think they did a fantastic job. They're such funny creators and lovely people, and they totally deserve it. And like, I'm really happy with how it's being received.
Yeah, I think most of the feedback I've seen has been pretty positive. They went into it wanting to just all of us, wanted just to make something fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is for pretty much anyone who watches it. Like it's just a fun movie, and like
it's
that's kind of like it has all these underlying tones that they've touched on, and I think it's great. I think, and the fact that it got into a film festival and is getting the recognition and the distribution that it is great. Yeah. It's a great opportunity, and it's great to see something that started out maybe just as a passion project grow into something that can be shared with more people.
Yeah, and I think the intention was, let's have fun and make a project that we like.
Yeah.
That was the initial intention, and it just, the fact that it's become something so much more has been really exciting, and it's going to be crazy the fact that I'm going to be able to like watch it on a big screen is like really incredible.
It's gonna be so exciting.
I know. We'll have to go together and see it.
Bro. We'll have a big group, bring everyone together.
Okay. Actually exciting that you haven't seen it, because maybe the first time you see it is on a big screen.
Maybe we should wait.
That's like way more fun for you, because like the first time I watched the cut, it was literally just like on my laptop, which was fantastic and I loved it. But I was like, oh man, I wish I could watch this on a bigger screen. Yeah.
You got your wish.
We'll go. Yeah, we'll go watch it together. It'll be fun. It's always fun to see your name in the credits,
Yeah, I mean, when The Night Clerk came out, I think it was shortly in theaters before it went to Netflix, and it was fun because that was my first job.
Yeah,
so like
that's really exciting.
Yeah, even though I was an unpaid camera intern, I think I ended up getting camera PA credit.
Oh, good.
Well, because they paid me,
as you should.
They paid me the last week thanks to Phil Shepard and his crew. They pushed to get me paid.
That's good.
They're super great people.
Yeah,
but yeah, like it was just fun to see your name in the credits for the first time.
Yeah, feels good to have a project out there.
Yeah. It's fun working on projects.
And it's even better when like you love all the people that made it happen. That makes it like 10 times better. And I really do love those people.
Well, especially like now that we've worked with, and for me, I mean, that wasn't your first time working with those guys. Like it was my first time, but then, we did Freelancers together, and working with Mallory and Stephen and Whitney all over again on that was so much fun.
They're the best.
Yeah.
Love those guys. We should all like go get lunch. Why don't we like hang out with them?
Everyone has lives.
Everyone's so freaking busy. Well, I want to go meet. This is such a tangent, but at some point I do want to go meet, because Stephen and Whitney got a dog.
I want to,
and it's like a whippet, and it's like so skinny and shaky, and I'm just like, I'm dying. I want to meet it so bad.
It looks super cute.
Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Yeah, when I think about Stop and Go and like the intentions behind it, I think, as cheesy as it is, like it's building off the idea that like laughter is kind of the best medicine, and like laughter is healing, and laughter doesn't fix everything, but it can ease the process of fixing, if that makes sense. And so I really hope that idea is communicated in Stop and Go to whoever chooses to see it. And I know for a fact that that was the intention of us as creators, to create something that wouldn't necessarily like be flippant or be like mercilessly light in the face of COVID, because COVID is obviously like a very serious problem, and it's like negatively impacted millions of people's lives. So we didn't want to treat it lightly, but we did want to touch on the fact that we are all going through this together. This is something that none of us have experienced, and we are all experiencing it differently, but all experiencing it kind of the same in the same vein. And I think that encapsulates the power of the film to bring a laugh to something, quite frankly, traumatic that we all went through as a society, and hopefully assist in the healing process that we will all have to go through now that the pandemic has slowed down a bit. I really hope that the timing of this coming out works in its favor to help people heal, help people have a laugh.
Yeah. I think most of the population is ready in one way or another to move on. You know, like I think everybody wants to settle into whatever new normal is in store for us. And I think being able to like laugh about tragic things, tragic events, is just kind of part of the process of it.
Yeah.
It's part of history, like even the darkest histories, there's jokes and parodies and videos about that now, all types of content.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, like we kind of just did it during the pandemic, and we were just like, I think everyone's just ready to kind of like laugh about it and move on.
Yeah.
There's always going to be like that undertone of like, this was kind of a bit of a tragedy, but
yeah, I
think being able to laugh about tragic things is part of the healing process. And so
because I think that in the process of healing, it's unrealistic to say COVID will always be a weight that hangs on our shoulders. It will always be this dark, deep, dark void thing that we're all dealing with.
Yeah.
It was that, and in many ways it is still that. But I think you're correct in saying that at some point a laugh is going to help, and a laugh is gonna pull us away from that line of thinking, or help to begin that process. And I think that's really important in dealing with any trauma.
Well, and there's so much during the pandemic that was comedic, like the toilet paper shortage.
Yes,
and like
there was so much funny stuff.
There was like so much funny content and that happened. Things that like the toilet paper shortage. It wasn't tragic. It didn't have to go with the death toll and the numbers in this case.
It was just kind of funny.
It was a weird product of the pandemic. It was just like, people are getting sick. Everyone go buy toilet paper. Just like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
So
or everyone buying up all the like bottled water.
Yeah.
I was like, why?
And I think I think they joke about, like, I think it was the first segment of the movie where they sit down and they're talking about all the aspirations of like what they want to do for the year, which I thought was so funny, because I think it like just kind of just rounded out kind of all the funniness, like people who she's like, oh, I want to like invest in airplanes and hotels, and then like nobody's flying or traveling now, and so just like funny things like that, like going to Coachella, like Coachella was canceled, and so it's just, I think like that part, it wasn't necessarily like making fun of like the sicknesses or the pandemic itself, but all of the products of what happens when there is a global pandemic. So I definitely think that is what I think people are going to connect with most. At least that's what I did. And so,
I think that was perfectly said. Yeah. I loved that. I think pulling out those moments of being quippy and being funny has
relating to the actual humor of the world.
Yes. Because the reality of it is, this is a catastrophic thing, but we're all just weird human beings trying to figure out how to get through this catastrophic thing. And we're going to do weird stuff, and we're going to do silly stuff. And isn't that worthy of a laugh?
Yep.
100%. That's how I feel about it.
I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a comedy of COVID.
I know. I agree.
So
I'm just on Instagram. I'm not really active on any other social media platforms. And it's just, my handle is Bren, Bren, and then my last name, Empey, Empey. And give me a follow, and I post stuff sometimes. It's very fun.
I guess Instagram's probably the best place to find me too. It's Tia, TIA _Rosenlof, ROSENLOF. So just my first and last name. Pretty generic. But yeah, I post sometimes.
I know. I feel like both of us are these people who like maybe post like twice a month, if that.
I think I definitely I post more when I get excited about stuff. So like when things tend to drop, or when I'm working on a new project, that's usually when you'll see me post more.
Also, follow Tia because she posts pictures of her very adorable huskies.
Oh.
So Definitely give her a follow for that.
Just for the doggos.
Just for the dogs.
They're crazy.
But also because she's great at what she does, but also the dogs.
But yeah, I'm sure you'll see us work together again.
100%.
So
yes.
It's going to be great. All the projects.
Thanks for listening. To find out who our next guest is and to stay up to date on all of our projects and announcements, follow us on all major social media platforms at Sorø Films. What makes this podcast distinct is that we put you, the audience, in the driver's seat. Influence the conversation by submitting questions for our guests ahead of each episode via Instagram. Sorø Films helps in all aspects of the filmmaking process, including funding, production, marketing, and distribution, with a focus on emerging feature filmmakers. If you're developing a project you'd like to pitch to us, you can submit it at sorofilms.com/submissions.